Part 1. No nanny had ever lasted more than a single day in the Volkov mansion. The estate rose above the city like a monument to power, 3 floors of white stone and glass, iron gates that opened silently, fountains that never stopped flowing. To the world, it was the home of success. The kingdom of Viktor Volkov, the tech millionaire who had built his empire from nothing. But inside, behind the polished doors and priceless paintings, lived something far less beautiful. Chaos. 4 children. 4 aching hearts wrapped in defiance. Artem Volkov, 12 years old, thin and sharp-featured, carried himself like a general commanding troops. He spoke little, but when he did, his words were precise and cutting. He had inherited his father's intelligence, but none of his patience. Mila, 10, possessed dramatic brilliance. She could cry on command, slam doors with theatrical timing, and twist conversations into emotional labyrinths. Her brown curls bounced like sparks of rebellion wherever she went. The twins, Denis and Dasha, 6 years old, were inseparable forces of nature. Where one went, destruction followed, and the other amplified it. If silence lasted longer than 5 minutes, it meant something expensive was being dismantled. 2 years earlier, their mother had died suddenly from an illness that moved too quickly and explained too little. Since then, grief had settled in the mansion like invisible smoke. And grief, when left unattended, becomes something else. It becomes anger. The first nanny after the funeral had arrived full of compassion. She lasted 6 hours. The twins hid her phone in the freezer. Mila accused her of trying to replace mommy. Artem stared at her with such cold calculation that she packed her bag before sunset. The second came armed with degrees in child psychology. She introduced rules, schedules, reward systems. By lunchtime, Denis had poured shampoo into the aquarium. By evening, Mila had staged a dramatic fainting episode in protest of emotional oppression. Artem simply whispered, "You won't last." She didn't. The third nanny attempted strict discipline. Timeouts. Raised voice. Consequences. Artem locked her out on the balcony during a thunderstorm. She left shivering, mascara running, dignity shattered. The fourth thought bonding activities would solve everything. Crafts. Baking. Yoga. The twins filled the entire kitchen with soap foam until it spilled into the hallway. Mila insisted she was allergic to flour. Artem unplugged the oven mid-bake. By nightfall, the nanny was gone. And so it continued. Viktor Volkov could not understand it. In boardrooms, men twice his age trembled under his steady gaze. Investors trusted his instincts blindly. He negotiated acquisitions worth millions without blinking. Yet in his own home, he was powerless. He worked longer hours now. It was easier to face numbers than emotions. Easier to solve market fluctuations than explain to a 10-year-old why her mother wasn't coming back. One rainy afternoon, Viktor stood in the grand living room while another nanny delivered her resignation speech. "They're not children," she said, shaking. There's something else." When the door closed behind her, silence filled the marble hall. Mrs. Petrova, the elderly housekeeper who had worked for the family for 15 years, approached him cautiously. "They miss her," she said softly. Viktor's jaw tightened. "I know that. They don't need replacing," she continued. "They need healing. And who exactly is qualified for that?" He snapped, more tired than angry. Mrs. Petrova hesitated. "There is someone." Viktor gave a humorless laugh. "Another miracle worker. She used to be a teacher. Very respected. Children adored her. And why isn't she teaching now?" "There was an accident, Mrs. Petrova said gently. "A car crash. She survived. But she lost the use of her legs." Viktor frowned. "You're suggesting I hire someone in a wheelchair to manage 4 uncontrollable children?" "I'm suggesting," Mrs. Petrova replied calmly, "that perhaps someone who has already survived losing everything might understand them." The next morning, Elena Morozova arrived. The rain had stopped, leaving the air crisp. The iron gates opened, and a modest car pulled into the long driveway. Nothing luxurious, nothing impressive. Viktor watched from the window as Mrs. Petrova helped Elena out. She moved with practiced ease, unfolding her wheelchair without hesitation. No self-consciousness, no dramatic sighs, just quiet efficiency. She wore simple clothes, no designer labels, no attempt to look authoritative. When she rolled into the mansion, the children were waiting. Artem leaned against the staircase railing, arms crossed. Mila sat dramatically on the sofa, flipping her hair. The twins crouched behind a column, whispering and snickering. Elena stopped in the center of the room. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Artem descended the stairs slowly. "You're the new one," he asked flatly. Yes, Elena replied. You know you won't last. She tilted her head slightly. Is that a warning? It's a fact. Mila stood up. You can't even run after us. The twins burst into laughter. Elena smiled. Not forced, not offended. You're right, she said calmly. I can't run. The children blinked. I also can't climb trees, chase you down hallways, or carry you upstairs, she continued. So if that's what you're planning to test me with, you'll be disappointed. Her honesty disrupted their rhythm. Dennis stepped forward boldly. What if we break something? Then we clean it, she replied. What if we scream? Dasha challenged. Then I'll listen, Elena said. Artem narrowed his eyes. What if we make you leave? Elena met his gaze without flinching. Do you want me to? The question landed like a stone in still water. Artem didn't answer. The first test came at breakfast. Mila, accidentally, knocked over a full glass of orange juice directly in front of Elena's wheels. Sticky liquid spread across the marble floor. All 4 children watched carefully. Previous nannies would gasp, scold, panic. Elena simply reached for a napkin. Could someone hand me a towel? She asked casually. Silence. Then, unexpectedly, Dasha shuffled toward the kitchen and returned with one. Elena wiped slowly, efficiently. No big reaction, Mila muttered. Elena glanced at her gently. It's just juice. The twins exchanged confused looks. By mid-morning, Dennis had hidden the TV remote. Mila insisted she had a headache caused by emotional stress. Artem unplugged the Wi-Fi router and waited. Elena rolled into the living room. It seems technology is tired today, she said thoughtfully. Good, let's see what you can do without it. She pulled out a deck of cards from her bag. I bet I can beat all of you in a memory game. You can't, Dennis said instantly. Prove it. Curiosity flickered. Within minutes, the twins were kneeling on the carpet. Mila hovered reluctantly. Artem stood at a distance, watching. Elena didn't command attention. She invited it. When Dennis cheated by flipping 2 extra cards, she noticed but didn't accuse. Instead, she said, winning is more fun when it's real. He flushed and corrected himself. By lunchtime, no one had stormed off. No one had cried. No one had packed a bag. Victor returned home earlier than usual, expecting noise, broken glass, tears. Instead, he paused in the doorway. The twins were building a tower out of wooden blocks. Mila was sketching at the table. Artem was standing beside Elena, pointing at something in a book. No one looked terrified. No one looked defeated. Elena noticed Victor first. She didn't stand, of course. She simply nodded politely. Good afternoon, she said. Victor looked around, almost suspicious. They didn't cause problems. Artem smirked faintly. We're still deciding. Mila rolled her eyes but didn't protest. The twins waved. Victor felt something shift inside him, something fragile. That evening, after dinner, as he passed the hallway, he overheard Artem speaking quietly to Elena. Everyone leaves, the boy said. Elena's voice was soft but steady. Has anyone stayed? No, maybe it's time someone did. Artem didn't reply, but he didn't walk away either. And as the mansion lights dimmed that night, for the first time in 2 years, the halls did not echo with shouting. They echoed with something unfamiliar. Possibility. Part 2. The second day began before sunrise. Elena was already awake when the mansion stirred. She had learned long ago that preparation was her quiet advantage. While others relied on speed, she relied on foresight. She reviewed the children's school schedules, their recent teacher notes misses. Petrova had discreetly shown her, and the subtle patterns she had noticed in just one day. Artem avoided eye contact but observed everything. Mila reacted before she reflected. The twins mirrored whichever emotion filled the room first. If chaos had a rhythm, she was beginning to hear it. By 8 o'clock, the storm arrived. Dennis poured salt into the sugar bowl before breakfast. Dasha announced loudly that Elena's wheelchair looked like a hospital. Mila declared she refused to go to school because no one understands artistic souls. And Artem, he calmly unscrewed the back panel of the Wi-Fi router again. Elena tasted the salted tea without flinching. Interesting choice, she said lightly. Savory mornings. Dennis stared at her, disappointed by the lack of explosion. Mila waited for a lecture. Instead, Elena folded her hands. It seems today we're testing creativity, she said. Good, I have a test too. That caught Artem's attention. What test? He asked. A challenge, Elena replied. We'll spend 1 hour without blaming anyone for anything. If something goes wrong, we solve it. No accusations, no drama, just solutions. That's boring, Mila scoffed. Then it should be easy to win, Elena said gently. Win. The word hooked them. For children who felt powerless, the idea of winning something, anything, mattered. The hour began. When Dennis knocked over his cup, accidentally, he opened his mouth to accuse Dasha. Elena simply raised an eyebrow. He paused. I'll clean it, he muttered. Mila started to complain about her outfit, then stopped herself mid-sentence. Artem reconnected the Wi-Fi without commentary. By the end of the hour, something small but significant had happened. They had cooperated. Elena didn't celebrate loudly. She simply nodded. Well done. You survived yourselves. Even Artem allowed the faintest smile. But the real battle came that afternoon. After school, Mila stormed into the house in tears. They said Mama died because Papa works too much. She cried, throwing her backpack across the floor. The twins froze. Artem's face hardened instantly. Victor wasn't home yet. Elena rolled closer, her voice steady. Who said that? Katya. Mila sobbed. She said rich fathers care more about money than family. The twins began shouting angrily. Artem turned toward the door, fury blazing. I'm going to her house. No, Elena said firmly. The single word stopped him. For the first time, her tone carried steel. Anger feels powerful, she continued, but it usually hurts the wrong person. Mila wiped her eyes. But it's not fair. No, Elena agreed softly. It isn't. She took a breath. When my accident happened, she began, people said it was my fault. Four faces turned toward her. They said I must have been distracted. Careless. That I ruined my own life. Was it true? Dennis asked quietly. No, Elena said. But when something painful happens, people look for someone to blame. It makes them feel safer. Mila's breathing slowed. Your mother's illness wasn't your father's fault, Elena continued. It wasn't yours either. Sometimes terrible things happen without villains. The twins climbed closer, leaning against her chair. Artem remained standing, but he was listening. That evening, Victor returned home to find his daughter sitting beside Elena, not crying, but talking. He watched unseen from the hallway as Mila asked hesitant questions about hospitals, about accidents, about fear. Elena answered honestly, not dramatically, not sugar-coated, just truth wrapped in gentleness. Later, Victor approached her in his office. You told them about your accident, he said. Yes, that's private, so is grief, she replied calmly. But silence makes it heavier. Victor studied her carefully. You're not afraid of them. No. Why? Elena's fingers rested lightly on her wheels. Because they don't scare me, she said. They're not trying to destroy anything. They're trying to feel something. Victor leaned back slowly. Do you know what the therapist said? He asked quietly. They said my children are displaying oppositional behavioral patterns tied to unresolved trauma. Elena gave a small smile. And what do you say? He hesitated. I say, I don't know how to reach them. For a moment, the powerful millionaire looked less like a titan of industry and more like a tired father. They don't need perfection, Elena said gently. They need presence. Over the following weeks, the mansion began to transform. Not magically, gradually. Elena introduced evening circles, 15 minutes where everyone, including Victor when he was home, answered one simple question: what did you feel today? At first, responses were sarcastic. Hungry. Bored. Fine. But Elena modeled vulnerability without self-pity. I felt frustrated when my chair got stuck in the garden gravel, she admitted once. I don't like needing help. The twins immediately offered to redesign the path. Artem began lingering after the others left, asking quiet questions about physics and how wheel mechanisms worked. Mila started writing short stories, dramatic tales of queens who lost their crowns but rebuilt kingdoms. Dennis insisted on learning how to cook, proper tea without salt. Even Victor began coming home earlier. One night, snow fell heavily outside, covering the estate in silence. The power flickered, then went out. The mansion plunged into darkness. The twins panicked instantly. Mila gasped. Artem grabbed a flashlight. Elena's voice cut through the tension. It's only temporary. They gathered in the living room, wrapped in blankets. Victor lit the fireplace manually. Without Wi-Fi, without television, without distractions, just warmth and shadows. Tell us a story, Dasha whispered. Elena looked at Victor. He nodded. And so she told them about a classroom she once loved. About students who believed she could solve any problem. About the day everything changed. She described waking up in a hospital bed. The silence in her legs. The fear. And then, Dennis asked. And then, she said softly, I learned that losing something doesn't mean losing yourself. The fire crackled. Mila leaned her head against Alina's arm. Artem stared into the flames, thoughtful. Victor watched all of them. Something inside him ached, but not painfully. It felt like thawing. Days turned into months. No nanny agencies called anymore. No resignation letters were written. Instead, there were school projects displayed proudly on the refrigerator. There were fewer slammed doors. There was laughter echoing in hallways that once felt like museums. One afternoon, Victor overheard the twins arguing in the garden. You can't push too fast. Dennis insisted. I'm not. Dasha protested. They were carefully pushing Alina's wheelchair along the new paved path they had helped design. Slow, Elena reminded them, smiling. Artem stood nearby, pretending not to supervise. Mila sketched the scene in her notebook. Victor felt something tighten in his throat. That evening, he approached Elena privately. You've done more in 2 months than anyone else in 2 years, he said. I didn't fix them, she replied gently. They were never broken. He hesitated. Stay, he said quietly. Not just as an employee. As part of this family. Elena looked toward the children playing across the room. Artem noticed her gaze and walked over. You're not leaving, right? He asked bluntly. No, she said. Promise. She extended her hand. Promise. He shook it solemnly. From across the room, Mila shouted, group hug. The twins raced forward. Even Victor allowed himself to kneel beside them. In that moment, the mansion no longer felt like a monument to wealth. It felt like something far rarer. A home learning how to breathe again. No nanny had ever lasted more than a day with the millionaire's 4 children. Until a woman in a wheelchair arrived, not to chase them, control them, or replace what they lost. But to stay, and sometimes, staying is the bravest thing a person can do.